Hey there, Rappies. Rapper9198 here. Welcome to another edition of Ryan's Day Reading. So today's Ryan's Day Reading will be a little bit different because I'm going to be reading two chapters today from How to Train Your Dragon. I'll be reading chapter 6 and 7 because chapter 6 is only the one page here actually. So I think without further ado, I'll just get on into it here. So here's chapter 6. Meanwhile, deep in the ocean. So I think just a little recap before. I know that, remember Hiccup was having his chat with Old Wrinkly. And figuring out how to train, he's figuring out how to train his dragon. And he figures out that he's gonna have to train it the hard way. But here, meanwhile, deep in the ocean. Meanwhile, deep in the ocean, but not so very far from the Isle of Berk, a real sea dragon, such as Old Wrinkly, had been describing lay sleeping on the seabed. He was indescribably large. He had been there so long that he almost seemed to be a part of the ocean floor itself. A great underwater mountain covered in shells and barnacles, some of his limbs half buried in the sand. Generation after generation of little hermit crabs had been born and had died in this dragon's ears. Hundreds and hundreds of years he'd slept, because he'd had a rather large meal. He had had the luck to catch a Roman legion camping on a cliff top. They were completely cut off, and he had spent an enjoyable afternoon wolfing down the whole lot of them, from commanding officer to lowliest private. Horses, chariots, shields, and spears, the entire lot went down the ravenous reptilian gullet. And while things such as golden chariot wheels are an additional source of fiber to a dragon's diet, they do take some time to digest. The dragon had crawled down into the depths of the ocean and gone into a sleep coma. Dragons can stay in this suspended state for eternity, half dead, half alive, buried under fathom after fathom of icy cold seawater. Not a muscle of this particular dragon had moved for 6 or 7 centuries. But the previous week, a killer whale who had chased some seals unexpectedly deep was surprised to notice a slight movement in the upper eyelid of the dragon's right eye. An ancestral memory stirred in the whale's brain, and he swam away from there as fast as his fins could carry him. And a week later, the sea around the Dragon Mountain, which had previously been teeming with crabs and lobsters and shoals of fish, was a great underwater desert. Not a mollusk stirred, not a scallop shimmied. The only sign of life for miles and miles was the rapid jerking of both the dragon's eyelids, fluttering up and down as if the dragon had suddenly gone into a lighter sleep and was dreaming who knows what a dark dreams. All right, so that's chapter 7. That's chapter 6. And now here's chapter 7. Toothless wakes up. So Toothless woke up about 3 weeks later. Fishlegs and Hiccup were at Hiccup's house. Everybody else was out, so Hiccup decided to take the opportunity to check on Toothless's basket. He pulled it out from under the bed. A thin plume of bluish-gray smoke was drifting out from under the lid. Fishlegs whistled. "He's awake, all right," said Fishlegs. "Here we go." Hiccup opened the basket. The smoke billowed out and made Hiccup and Fishlegs cough. Hiccup fanned it away. Once his eyes had stopped watering, he could make out a very small, ordinary dragon looking up at him with enormous, innocent, grass-green eyes. "Hello, Toothless," said Hiccup. "Hello, Toothless," said Hiccup in what he hoped was a good accent in Dragonese. "What are you doing?" asked Fishlegs curiously. Dragonese is punctuated by shrill shrieks and popping noises and sounds, most extraordinary when spoken by a human. Yeah. So, oh, hello, Toothless. I think that's how it would be. "Just talking to it," mumbled Hiccup, very embarrassed. "Just talking to it?" gasped Fishlegs in astonishment. "What do you mean you're talking to it? You can't talk to it. It's an animal, for Thor's sake." "Oh, shut up, Fishlegs," said Hiccup impatiently. "You're frightening it." Toothless huffed and puffed and blew out some smoke rings. He inflated his neck to make himself look bigger, which is something dragons do when they are scared or angry. Eventually, he got up the courage to unfurl his wings and flap up onto Hiccup's arms. He walked his way up onto Hiccup's shoulder, and Hiccup turned his face toward him. Toothless pressed his forehead onto Hiccup's forehead and gazed deeply and solemnly into Hiccup's eyes. They stayed there, snout to nose, without moving, for about 60 seconds. Hiccup had to blink a lot because the gaze of the dragon is hypnotic and gives the unnerving feeling that it is sucking your soul away. Hiccup was just thinking, "Wow, this is amazing. I'm really making contact here," when Toothless bent down and bit him on the arm. Hiccup let out a yelp and threw Toothless off him. "Fish!" hissed Toothless, hovering in the air in front of Hiccup. "What fish now? I haven't got any fish," said Hiccup in Dragonese, rubbing his arm. Luckily, Toothless didn't have any teeth, but dragons have powerful jaws, so it was still painful. Toothless bit him on the other arm. "Fish!" said Toothless again. "Are you okay?" asked Fishlegs. "I can't believe I'm asking this, but what's he saying?" "He wants to eat," replied Hiccup, grimly rubbing both arms. He tried to make his voice sound firm, but pleasant, to dominate the creature by the sheer force of his personality, as Gobber had said, "But we have no fish." "Okay then," said Toothless, "eat." He made a lunge for Fiddlesticks, who streaked up the nearest wall with a yowl of terror. Hiccup just managed to grab Toothless by the tail as he flew off in pursuit. Yeah. Here's Hiccup and Toothless here. So. Hiccup just managed to grab Toothless by the tail as he flew off in pursuit. The dragon struggled wildly, shouting, "What fish now? What food now? Cats are yummy. Want food now." "We don't have any fish," repeated Hiccup. From between gritted teeth, feeling all his calmness deserting him. And you can't eat the eat, and you can't eat the cat. I like him." Fiddlesticks mooed indignantly from a beam high up in the roof. They put Toothless in Soik's bedroom, where there was a mouse problem. For a while, he was happy swooping after the desperately squeaking mice, but then he got bored and started attacking the mattress. "Stop!" yelled Hiccup as feathers flew in all directions. Toothless replied by throwing up the remains of a recently deceased mouse right in the middle of Stoik's pillow. "Arrgh," said Hiccup. "Arrgh," said Stoik the Vast, who entered the room at that very moment. Toothless launched himself at Stoic the Vast's beard, which he mistook for a chicken. "Get him off!" said Stoic. "He doesn't do what I say," said Hiccup. Yell very loudly at him." Stoic shouted very loudly. Hiccup yelled as loudly as he could. Please, will you stop eating my father's beard?" As Hiccup had suspected, Toothless took absolutely no notice whatsoever. "I knew I'd be useless at yelling," thought Hiccup gloomily. Drop to the floor. Drop to the floor. Drop to the floor, you horrible little reptile," yelled Stoic. Toothless dropped to the floor. "You see," said Stoic, "that's how to deal with dragons." Newt's Breath and Hookfane, Stoic's hunting dragons, came padding into the room. Toothless stiffened as they paced around him, their yellow eyes glinting evilly, each was about the size of a leopard, and they were as delighted by his arrival as a couple of giant cats might be by that of a cute little kitten. "Greetings, yellow fire breather," hissed New's Breath as he gave the wriggling newcomer a sniff. "We must wait," purred Hookfane menacingly, "until we are alone, and then we can give you a proper welcome." He gave a vicious swipe at Toothless with one paw. A claw like a kitchen knife just nicked Toothless on the rump, and the little dragon howled and jumped into Hiccup's tunic, until only his tail was poking out of the neck. "Hookfane!" bellowed Stoic. "My claw slipped," whined Hookfane. Get out of here before I make you two handbags," yelled Stoic, and Newt's Breath and Hookfane slunk out, muttering obscene dragon curses under their breaths. Get out of here before I make you into handbags. That's what it says. "As I was saying," said Stoic the Vast, "that's how to deal with dragons." Stoic was looking at Toothless with uncharacteristic anxiety. "Son," said Stoic, hoping there might be some sort of mistake, "is this your dragon?" "Yes, father," Hiccup admitted. It's very small, isn't it?" said Stoic slowly. Stoic was not an observant person, but even he could not fail to notice that this dragon was remarkably small. "And it hasn't got any teeth." There was an awkward silence. Fishlegs came to Hiccup's rescue. "That's because it's an unusual breed," said Fishlegs. "An antique and violent species called the Toothless Daydream. Distant relations of the monstrous nightmare, but far more ruthless and so rare they are practically extinct." "Really?" Stoic surveyed the Toothless Daydream doubtfully. Yep. Here's the picture there. "It looks just like a common or garden to me." "Ah, but with respect, Chief," said Fishlegs, "that's where you're wrong. To the amateur eye, and indeed to its prey, it looks exactly like a common or garden. But if you look a little closer, the characteristic daydream marking," Fishlegs pointed to a wart on the end of Toothless's nose, "marks out from the more ordinary breed." "By Thor, you're right," said Stoic. "And it's not just your average Toothless Daydream either." Fishlegs was getting carried away now. "This particular dragon is of royal blood." "No," said Stoic, very impressed. Stoik was a terrific snob. Yes, said Fishlegs solemnly. Your son has only gone and burgled the offspring of King Daggerfangs himself, the reptilian ruler of Wild Dragon Cliff. The royal daydreams tend to start out small, but they grow into creatures of impressive, even gargantuan size. Just like you, eh, Hiccup? Said Stoik, giving a great laugh and ruffling his son's hair. Stoik's tummy gave out a plaintive rumble like a distant underground explosion. Time for a little supper, I think. Clear up this mess, will you, boys? Stoik strode off, relieved to have had his faith in his son restored. Thanks, Fishlegs, said Hiccup. You were inspired. Not at all, said Fishlegs. I owed you one after setting you up for that fight with Snotlout. Father's going to find out at some point anyway, though, said Hiccup gloomily. Not necessarily, said Fishlegs. Look at all that talking you were doing with the Toothless Daydream here. That was incredible. Unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. You'll be training him in next to no time. I was talking to him all right, said Hiccup, but he didn't listen to a word I said. When he was going to bed that night, Hiccup didn't want to leave Toothless in front of the fire with Newt's Breath and Hookfane. Can I take him to bed with me? He asked Stoik. A dragon is a working animal, said Stoik the Vast. Too much hugging and hissing will make him lose his vicious streak. But Newt's Breath will kill him if I leave him alone with them. Newt's Breath gave an appreciative growl. It would be my pleasure, he hissed. Nonsense, boomed Stoik, unaware of Newt's Breath's last remark, as he didn't speak Dragonese. He gave Newt's Breath a friendly cuff around the horns. Newt's Breath just wants to play. That sort of rough and tumble is good for a young dragon. Makes him learn to stick up for himself. Hookfane extended his jaws like switchblades and drummed them on the hearth. Hiccup pretended to say goodnight to Toothless by the fire, but smuggled him into the bedroom under his tunic. You must be absolutely quiet, he told Toothless sternly as they climbed into bed, and the dragon nodded eagerly. In fact, he snored loudly the entire night. But Hiccup didn't care. Hiccup spent the whole of the winter on Berk in various states of very cold, ranging from fairly chilly to absolutely freezing. At night, too many layers were considered sissy, so Hiccup generally lay awake for a couple of hours until he had shivered himself into a light sleep. Now, though, as Hiccup stretched his feet out against Toothless's back, he felt waves of heat coming off the little dragon, gradually creeping up his legs and warming his freezing cold stomach and heart, even traveling right up to his head, which hadn't been truly warm for almost 6 months. Even his ears burned contentedly. It would have taken the snoring of 6 strong dragons to have woken Hiccup. So deeply he did sleep that night. Yep, and there they are sleeping. All right, so there's chapter 7 all done. So those are another 2 chapters done tonight. So I think it's pretty... I know I'm trying to do, as I said, what David was suggesting I do is to try to give my own thoughts, I guess, into this, or kind of give reactions to it. But I think that, I think it's pretty much the same concept as, bringing home a dog or a cat, bringing home a pet. They have to get used to the environment. You have, it's basically, it's kind of like training a pet in general. Now, doesn't have to be dragons or training like a wild animal. I guess it'd be kind of the same concept as that. Yeah. I think all animals have certain ways of connecting with people or communicating with people. And then also, let me see, where was that? Looking, here we go. Here was this whole thing, the learning to speak Dragonese. So yep. So in order to train your dragon without using the traditional methods of yelling at it, you must first learn to speak Dragonese. Dragons are the only other creatures who speak a language as complicated and sophisticated as humans. Here are some common dragon phrases to get you started. So here there's kind of a picture of, I guess, the whole little, I think the page from inside the book. So for here, no pooing inside the house, please. Nia krappa in the husus pishu. So that's apparently Dragonese. And then, let's see. My mother does not like to be bitten on the bottom. Me mama no like it yum yum on the bum. Oh my gosh. Me mama no like it yum yum on the bum. That's funny. Oh my gosh. All right, and then let's see. Please, would you be so kind as to spit my friend out? Pishu kindly gobba ot me freely. And then also find on here, these are different examples, I guess, of different phrases. Okay, let's try that again. Do it one more time. Do it one more time. Okay, there we go. Nice. All right, that's very interesting. I don't know, I guess it's almost a little bit like a combination of English and gibberish, I think. But yeah, I think it's, I feel like this book, the concept of it is pretty much similar to training a pet or having to try to train a wild animal, I guess. Like, if you were like a zookeeper or something, I don't know, but I think the same concept applies to other animals and pets. But anyways, yeah, those are chapter 6 and 7 for you. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Love you rappies to death. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.